Lily's words hit me like a ton of bricks. Brian, I want a divorce. After almost 20 years of marriage, I should have been prepared for something like this, but hearing it still left me breathless. For months, she'd been spending more time with her friend Erica, who had a marriage guru reputation. Of course, Erica's expertise came from her own 3 failed marriages and a talent for handing out advice between drinks. Brian, are you even listening? Lily's voice cut through the silence again. I said I want a divorce. I heard you, Lily, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. But this is a big decision. I don't want to say anything I'll regret. I've tried to be a good husband and father. I've given you everything I've got. If something's been wrong, I haven't noticed. Is this something that just came up, or has it been building for a while? Lily paused before speaking. It's not sudden. I just need space, time to figure things out, meet new people. See what else is out there. I read that we need to be separated for 90 days before the divorce can be finalized. Maybe I'll change my mind before then. I sat there, taking in her words. Every part of me wanted to understand, but nothing could prepare me for what was coming next. That's what I've heard too, I said carefully. The 90-day separation gives both of us the freedom to date without it being considered infidelity. But once those papers are signed, it's up to either one of us to continue or stop the process. Neither of us has to agree to halt it. She looked startled, as if the thought hadn't occurred to her. I thought the person who files first controls whether it moves forward, she said hesitantly. Well, just in case, I'll file too. That way, we're on equal ground, I countered. Fair, don't you think? Her face twisted into uncertainty. Are you saying you want this, Brian? A divorce? I looked her in the eye. Lily, I thought I was enough, as a husband, a father, and a partner. I must have been wrong. Her tone softened, almost panicked. No, you've been amazing in every way. This isn't about you being inadequate. I feel like I need to explore, try something different. It's not that you're not enough, I just need to figure out what's missing. Lily, I said, exhaling slowly, the fact that you're looking for something I can't give makes me feel like I've already failed. I paused. So, have you already hired a lawyer and drawn up the papers? She ignored my comment about inadequacy and answered briskly. Not yet. But I'm planning to go with Mark Taylor. He's the one Erica recommended. He handled all of her divorces. I nodded to myself, piecing together the influence her friend had in this situation. That makes sense, I said. I'll probably go with my cousin Dana. She's offered to help me if I ever needed it. Lily's face tightened at the mention of Dana. Dana? As in the Dana? The one who made your brother's ex-wife cry on the stand? Yes, the same Dana, I said, my voice steady. She's tough, but she fights for her clients like no one else. And, funnily enough, after the last family reunion, she might have had a few too many drinks. She told me that if I ever needed a divorce lawyer, she'd take my case pro bono. So, here we are. Lily blinked, momentarily speechless, before muttering, great. Just great. Wow, Brian said, his voice calm but measured. We've got a lot to figure out. How about we take the next 2 weeks to prepare for the divorce? That way, we can start our separation on the 1st of the month. Does that sound okay to you? Lily hesitated, frowning slightly. I don't see why we need to do anything right now. Can't we just wait until the separation period is over? Brian leaned forward, his expression thoughtful. Well, think about it like this, he explained. The purpose of the separation, as I see it, is to give us a chance to experience what life would be like if we were divorced. That way, we can decide whether it's truly what we want. If we don't prepare and go into it realistically, We won't learn anything until the divorce is finalized, and by then, it might be too late to avoid unnecessary messiness. Does that make sense? Lily hesitated before admitting, I guess I hadn't thought about it that way. Here's what I propose, Brian suggested, standing up. Let's head to the kitchen, grab a notepad, and make a list of everything we need to figure out. I'll put on some coffee. He walked out of the bedroom, leaving Lily to mull over his words. By the time she joined him in the kitchen, the smell of brewing coffee filled the air, and Brian was already jotting notes on a notepad. Okay, he said, tapping his pen against the page, there's so much to consider, but I think the most important thing to start with is the kids. Lily's face tensed. What do you mean by that? She asked nervously. We need to tell them what's happening, Brian explained. We have to agree on what we're going to say so they don't feel confused or, worse, blame themselves for this. Lily shifted uneasily, her hands wringing together. Both of their daughters were sensitive and struggled with emotional situations. I don't see why we have to tell them right away, she said, her voice tight. Why not just wait until the 90 days are over? If we end up not divorcing, we wouldn't need to say anything at all. Brian gave her a pointed look. And how are you going to explain it when they ask why I'm not living here anymore? Why not just stay? Lily countered quickly. We can still co-parent during the separation, and it'll feel like everything is normal for them. Brian shook his head. That's not realistic, Lily. For starters, how would we manage our dates? Let's say one of us wants to go out, and the other says it's not a good time. That's bound to create resentment. One of us might start thinking the other is deliberately trying to sabotage their freedom to date. He sighed. And how are you supposed to see what divorced life would actually feel like if everything stays the same? Lily's lips thinned, but Brian continued. Besides, he added, the kids are going to find out anyway. Whether it's from overhearing something, seeing us with other people, or hearing it from someone else, the truth will come out. And if we don't explain it to them in a clear, united way, they might think we're cheating on each other. The hardest part, Brian said, his voice softening, is that no matter how much we reassure them, they're probably going to feel like it's their fault. It's just how kids think when their parents split up. We need to emphasize that we love them and that this isn't because of anything they did. They're strong kids, and they'll adapt eventually, though we might need to get them some counseling to help. He paused, a wry smile flickering on his face. Who knows? They might even enjoy having extra grandparents one day from your future boyfriend and my future girlfriend, more presents for birthdays and holidays. Lily's mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. Of course, Brian went on, we'll need to coordinate all of that. Birthdays, Mother's Day, Father's Day, Thanksgiving, Christmas, it's hard enough with just one set of grandparents. I can't imagine trying to juggle all of that with two separate households. He leaned back, crossing his arms. And speaking of separate households, you'd have to meet your guy at his place, or pay for a hotel. It wouldn't be right for either of us to bring someone into the house when the other is still living here with the kids. Lily was visibly struggling to keep up with the whirlwind of logistics Brian was laying out. And then there's the financial side of things, he continued. Two households mean double the expenses, rent, utilities, everything. We'd need to cancel all our joint accounts, split the shared assets, and figure out child support and spousal support payments. It's going to be a major adjustment for both of us. He set the pen down and looked at her calmly. Does all that sound fair to you? There's a lot to sort out by the first, Jeff said calmly, as if they were discussing the weather. Darlene sat there, frozen, struggling to process everything he was saying. The words felt like they were coming from someone she didn't recognize. Jeff continued, his voice steady. I'll look for an apartment closer to work. That way, the girls can stay with me on my visitation nights, and at least they'll have a bed to sleep in. The standard visitation arrangement is every other weekend and alternate major holidays unless you want to be more flexible with the schedule. Darlene's concern deepened. Jeff, I thought you'd be spending more time with the girls. There's their homework, sports, drama club, everything they're involved in. They really enjoy spending time with you. Jeff nodded thoughtfully. I'll be involved as much as I can, but the reality is, you or your future husband, whoever he may be, will need to take on some of what I'm currently doing. Weeknight visits will be tough. They'll be better off at home on school nights. If I get involved with someone new, she might have kids, too, and I'll have to help with their school stuff and activities. You might have to support your new husband and his kids as well. There's also the challenge of having to keep clothes and toiletries in two places, handling school transportation, and the general disruption to everyone's routine. It's not going to be easy for either of us. Darlene felt a growing sense of panic inside. This isn't at all how Miranda said things would go, she thought. She promised me Jeff would cave the moment I mentioned divorce, that he'd offer to continue doing everything for the family while I got to date on the side. I've completely lost control of this situation. I'm feeling overwhelmed, Darlene said, her voice tight. I really need to sleep. Can we talk more tomorrow? She tried to mask her anxiety with a calm tone, hoping Jeff would agree to sleep with her and give her a chance to manipulate the situation by using intimacy to distract him from his firm stance. Sorry, darling, Jeff replied, his voice measured. I've got a few more things I need to jot down before bed. You know how my mind works, better to get this all sorted out before the first. We'll feel better once it's done. Good night, dear. Darlene didn't sleep at all that night. Her mind raced, and she needed to call Miranda to explain Jeff's unexpected response. Miranda would know what to do. It was the only thing that gave her some comfort and allowed her to finally drift off to sleep. The next morning, Darlene woke to find that Jeff hadn't slept in their bed. She was instantly irritated. Oh my God, that idiot must have stayed up all night working on his stupid divorce list, she muttered under her breath. But when she walked into the kitchen, Jeff wasn't there. All that was left was a notebook on the table. Darlene peeked into the guest bedroom, and there he was, fast asleep. She sighed and went back to start making breakfast. While the food cooked, her eyes couldn't help but wander to the notebook. The first page was titled Matters for Shifting Responsibility. It was a detailed list: mortgage, homeowner's insurance, gas, water, electricity, cable, cell phone, trash, internet security, car payments, car insurance, health insurance, dental insurance, Amazon Prime, LifeLock membership, life flight medical evacuation. The list seemed endless. Darlene's stomach sank as she skimmed it. This was just the start, alongside everything they discussed about banking changes. On the next page was a budget outlining Jeff's projected expenses for living in an apartment and an estimate of how much alimony she'd need to maintain her and the girls' current lifestyle. The budget showed that they'd be short several $100s each month. There was also a list of ways to cut expenses. Guess Jeff's beloved Waffle House and Starbucks trips are off the table, Darlene thought, a smirk creeping across her face. Then she glanced at the list of her own expenses: her gym membership, the women's group she was part of, dining out more than once a week. There were even expenses related to the children's extracurricular activities, fees, uniforms, materials, things she hadn't even factored into her divorce plan. But that wasn't all. On another page, Jeff had written out a list of tasks Darlene would now have to handle herself. Refueling the car. Regular car maintenance. Calling a mechanic. Calling a plumber. Calling heating and air conditioning repair services. Mowing the lawn. Washing the cars. Grocery shopping. She slammed the notebook shut, frustration building inside her. I'm not prepared for this, she thought. How did everything get so complicated? Damn it. Why isn't Jeff acting like he's supposed to and giving me what I want? I need to call Miranda before he wakes up, Darlene fumed, pacing in the kitchen. She quickly dialed Miranda's number. Hello, Miranda, it's Darlene. I have to speak quietly because Jeff is still asleep nearby. Miranda's voice was filled with anticipation. How did it go last night? Did he cave? Darlene's frustration spilled over. Instead of begging me to stay and offering to do whatever it takes, Jeff agreed to the divorce. Then, he started making a list of all the things he handles that I'll have to take over if we split. He plans to rent an apartment, only see the girls on weekends, and insists that we actually separate and live like we're divorced for the next 90 days. He doesn't seem scared at all. What do I do now? Miranda chuckled, clearly unfazed. Oh, darling, don't get worked up. He's bluffing, trying to manipulate you. He won't sign anything real. It's pathetic that he's making a list of chores to make you feel like you need him more than he needs you. You control the kids, and you control the bedroom, that's all the power you need. Trust me, in no time, you and Robert will be in bed together, and you'll still have your home and husband. It's all talk on his part. Darlene was torn. I hope you're right. Honestly, Jeff hasn't done anything yet. I'll stay strong, at least until I see how far he's willing to go. Thanks, Miranda. He's waking up, got to go. As Jeff stumbled into the kitchen, Darlene greeted him nervously, trying to act casual. Hey, Jeff, want some coffee? He rubbed his eyes. Drinking coffee late last night wasn't the best idea. I barely slept. Darlene's curiosity piqued. Why didn't you come to bed? Jeff hesitated, then answered flatly, I was going to, but I didn't trust myself. Darlene's confusion deepened. What do you mean? Jeff hesitated before answering, his voice steady. Honey, I saw you sleeping naked, and I got really turned on. You're still the most beautiful woman I know. But when I saw you, I thought, if you let me make love to you, it would just be pity sex, to ease the pain from the whole divorce talk. I wasn't sure I could resist. Darlene's voice softened, almost pleading. Honey, we're still married. I'm yours, and only yours, at least until the separation starts. Can't we keep acting like husband and wife until then? Jeff's response was firm. I'm afraid not. I'm more convinced than ever that this separation needs to start now. We'll still be under the same roof for a few more days, but it's over. The moment you said I'm unhappy, it started for me. I want to see you happy, even if I'm no longer in your life the way I used to be. Darlene's frustration flared again. Jeff, you keep forgetting this is just a separation. We don't have to get divorced. Jeff exhaled heavily, running a hand through his hair. Relax, Dar. Give me a little time, and I'm sure we'll stay married. It'll be better than before. But for now, I've decided to take the day off. Billy can handle the repair crews. I'm going to start putting some separation plans into action. We won't feel the effects until the 1st, but we've got 90 days to really see how it feels. By the way, I'll make sure we both get some cash. You'll need to use cash for now, until we get our own credit cards and debit cards. We've got our individual checking accounts, I'll transfer half of the joint account to each of us today. We need to do it now so we can have our new cards by the 1st. I'll update you tonight on what I've done, and what you need to do to get control of your share of the assets. Darlene was starting to feel the weight of her decisions more deeply. Oh, you'd better hurry, or you'll be late for work. I'll make breakfast for the kids and see them off to school, she said, forcing herself to sound normal as Jeff prepared to leave for the day. But work wasn't much better. As the office manager for the regional insurance branch, Darlene was hardly managing things well. And, as usual, Robert, the smooth-talking flirt, showed up at just the right moment. He was tall, with dark wavy hair and a smile that could make any woman weak in the knees. Robert always knew how to flatter her, telling her how beautiful she was and how underappreciated she must feel at home. "Can we go listen to some lovely music again?" he asked with a glint in his eye. Darlene felt a surge of excitement. Robert always made her feel alive in ways Jeff hadn't in years. "Soon," she promised. "We'll have more time together. I'll call you later." As he left, she felt a weight lift off her shoulders, her anxiety over the separation from Jeff fading away as memories of Robert's touches and kisses came rushing back. Their stolen moments in the elevator over the past few months had sparked something in her, something she hadn't realized she needed. When Darlene returned home from work, she immediately noticed the signs that Jeff had been there. It was like he never left, and yet, her mind felt clearer. She was emotionally more prepared now to handle the financial mess Jeff was so focused on. "It's simple," she thought. "I've got 90 days to have fun, still be married, and then figure out how Robert and I can keep seeing each other without getting caught." She sat down at the kitchen table, casting one more glance at the notebook Jeff had left behind. He'd added more items to their list. But then, her eyes fell on a new section titled Potential Women for Dating, 2 columns, one for women who have already shown interest, and the other for women I'd like to see if they're interested. Darlene froze when she saw the first column. Her sister, Erica, was listed. "That witch," she seethed, grabbing her phone and immediately calling Erica. "Hey, Dar," Erica answered, clearly in good spirits. "How's it going?" Darlene couldn't hold back. "How dare you try to steal my husband, you?" "Whoa, slow down," Erica interrupted, confused. "What are you talking about? Jeff made a list of women who want to date him, and your name is on it." Darlene was furious. "I don't know anything about a list," Erica said coolly. "But yeah, after a few too many drinks, I did tell him that if he ever wised up and left your ungrateful behind, I'd be happy to take his place." "But wait, you're telling me Jeff actually showed you the list? Trouble in paradise? Did you catch him or did he catch you messing around with someone else?" Darlene snapped, "It's not like that. I just told him I needed space, a little time to explore new relationships." Erica laughed, "Aha. So you're looking for something on the side. Who is it? Or is there more than one?" "No. I haven't been with anyone yet. Jeff and I are just going through a 90-day separation, then we'll decide if we want to stay married or not." "No big deal," Darlene explained, trying to steady herself. "So, let me get this straight," Erica said, with a hint of amusement in her voice. "You're about to be legally separated, and when Jeff gets to sleep with someone, you won't be able to do a thing about it? Let me know when that happens, because I swear, the second the clock strikes midnight, I'll be all over him. I'll make it crystal clear to him that I'm not you, and I'll be loyal to him for life." Darlene felt her blood boil. "You better stay away from him, Erica." Or what?" Erica cut her off, now speaking with cold, biting clarity. "You're the one who's asking for this separation. All these years, you've gone on and on about what a great provider Jeff is, what a wonderful husband and father he is. You've bragged about how incredible he is in bed and how many orgasms he's given you. And now you want to throw that all away? Have you lost your mind? Just let me know the second he's free. This is the one time in my life I'll be thrilled to be my sister's backup plan. Bye." Darlene stared at her phone, the words still ringing in her ears. Erica's bluntness shocked her, but it also solidified a creeping dread that had been taking root in her mind. Darlene tried to shake off the conversation with Erica, but it was hard to push aside the unsettling thoughts. Her gaze returned to the list in front of her. The sight of Jenny, Jeff's secretary, made her blood run cold. A petite, stunning single mother, almost 20 years younger than Jeff, she was right at the top of his list. That could only mean one thing: she had shown interest in her husband. She's probably just looking for a sugar daddy, Darlene muttered bitterly to herself, not liking how the idea felt in her gut. The list had 2 more names, one married and the other marked with a D, indicating a divorce. It was a lot to process. Jeff had obviously been doing more than just keeping an eye on their house. There were a few more women listed, including a handful of people from their neighborhood, women Jeff had done free work for over the years. He'd built a successful handyman business despite having a degree in psychology. He had grown it so much that now 3 crews worked under him. I guess he's checking out more than just their plumbing, Darlene thought darkly. The list wasn't even complete. There were 3 entries with no names, just descriptions. Waitress at Waffle House. Barista at Starbucks. Clerk at Walmart. Darlene couldn't help but wonder how many other women Jeff had caught the eye of. She never thought he would start dating during their separation. Then again, maybe he already had someone lined up. She shook her head, feeling the weight of everything she hadn't expected to happen. Just then, Jeff walked in, his eyes immediately landing on the notebook in her hands. He probably knew exactly where this conversation was going. "Well, Jeff, looks like you haven't wasted any time looking for my replacement." "My own sister?" Darlene's voice shook with disbelief. "How could you?" Jeff took a deep breath and replied casually, "I was just trying to catch up with you on finding a boyfriend." "What? What do you mean?" "I don't have a boyfriend. I just need some space to explore new relationships." "Like with Robert Turner?" Darlene froze. "How do you know about Robert Turner? What are you going to do about it?" "I ran into Sylvia at Walmart today," Jeff said, his voice steady. "She's an old gossip, but she's the one who brought it up. She told me you 2 are good friends, and that Robert stops by your office a lot. She mentioned that you both have lunch together every day." Jeff let that hang in the air before continuing, "She seemed worried about it, especially with your company's no-office romance policy." Darlene felt her heart racing, but she tried to keep her composure. "Sylvia is just talking nonsense. She has no idea what she's talking about." After a long silence, Darlene couldn't stop herself. "What did she say exactly?" "Sylvia said, as far as I know, you're good friends with one of our new partners, Robert Turner. She mentioned that he stops by your office a lot, and the 2 of you have lunch together every day. She asked me, what's going on? You know the president of your company has a strict no-office romance policy. Then she mentioned you 2 have been spending time together outside of work, and I think that's why she brought it up." "Robert is just a friend," Darlene said, trying to sound casual. "We hardly do anything. We talk and have lunch. He's very sweet to me, compliments me, even when I'm not looking my best." "Anything special happen between you 2? Jeff asked, his eyes narrowing. Darlene's mind flashed back to the stolen moments with Robert, brief elevator rides, lingering touches. She knew her face gave her away. Maybe the better question is, how far have you and Robert gone? What would his wife think? Jeff asked quietly. "Wife?" Darlene stammered. "He's not married." "Who told you that? What kind of woman do you think I am?" She was flustered, trying to deny it. Jeff raised an eyebrow, his tone sharp. "You don't seem very interested in checking out the men you're trying to date. Let me show you his Facebook page, where I got that information." After a moment of searching, Jeff leaned back in his chair and said, "Is this Robert Turner?" Darlene hesitated, but eventually replied, "Yes, that's him." "And what does it say about his marital status?" Jeff asked, holding up his phone with the Facebook page in view. Darlene glanced at the screen. "It says he's married to Cynthia and has 2 sons." Thinking quickly, she tried to save face. Maybe that's old information. He might be divorced now. Jeff raised an eyebrow, not buying it. "Look again." The page was updated 3 days ago. Don't you think he'd update something as important as his marital status? And check out what his wife posted recently. He read aloud from the screen, mocking the post as he did. Asterisk, the boys and I can't wait to join Robert when the school year ends. Johnny and Robert Jr. have been key players on their school's baseball team and might even make it to the state tournament. We'll reunite with the family as soon as the school year ends, or maybe later, if they do make it to the state tournament. Asterisk. He paused for a moment, shaking his head. What a piece of work, Jeff muttered. He never told me he was married. I wouldn't do anything to ruin someone else's marriage, Darlene protested, desperate to change the subject. You don't seem too concerned about ruining your own marriage, Jeff shot back, his voice cold. A tense silence hung in the air between them. Darlene knew she had been caught. She needed time to think, but she couldn't let Jeff know that Robert was the main reason she wanted the separation. She tried to cover it up. Well, he's just one of several men I've thought about dating. I could make a list, just like you, she said, trying to sound nonchalant. Oh, and I just remembered something else important, Jeff said, ignoring her attempt to deflect. If we decide we want to stay married after the separation, we should both provide each other with a medical report to ensure we're free from STDs. Darlene's face reddened. Now you're just being disgusting, she spat, but Jeff was unfazed. I'm just being cautious. Honestly, I wasn't planning on dating anyone, since it's only 90 days. But if I feel the need for sex, I could just find a prostitute. I'm sure you'd like to feel safe, just as much as I do. Remember, it's not only about you, it's about who you sleep with, who they've slept with before you, and so on. Jeff leaned back, enjoying the discomfort he was causing, while Darlene's anger boiled beneath the surface. But she knew better than to react impulsively. She stayed quiet as he moved on to the next topic. Okay, Dar, I promise to update you on what I've done for the separation process, Jeff continued, clearly trying to regain control. I've lined up a lot of tasks, most of which will take effect on the 1st. The main thing right now is sorting out the bank accounts and credit card accounts so that you'll have easy access to your funds. We'll deal with the mortgage, utilities, and everything else over the next week or so. Oh, and I've got some good news about the financial side. Did I mention my secretary, Jenny, works as a night manager at the Royal Crest Apartments? They're close to my job, so I asked her about vacancies. They have a 2-bedroom available, but I need to act fast. Normally, it's too expensive, but Jenny said if I become a maintenance specialist for the complex, I could get a 50% discount on the rent. That would mean more money for you and the kids. You haven't signed a lease yet, have you? Darlene asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Remember, we have 90 days, and you could just come back here if you play your cards right. Jeff shook his head. No, I haven't signed the lease yet, but I had to explain why I was looking for an apartment. Jenny said they don't usually rent month to month, but she thought she could get it approved for the 90 days. When she found out about the separation, she mentioned she'd like me to ask her out. I was surprised, honestly, given the age difference. I didn't know she was interested in me. I told her I was flattered, but company policy doesn't allow supervisors and their subordinates to have anything other than a professional relationship. Jenny said she'd consider moving to a different job if that's the only issue. That's why I added her to the list. Darlene's blood boiled. She bit her tongue to avoid making a scene, knowing that any reaction would only escalate things. She remained silent as Jeff continued talking, her mind racing with thoughts of what she could do next. Jeff's voice remained calm, as if this conversation was just another step in the process. I'm just taking a few things over to the apartment, he said, moving slowly with the small bag in his hand. I don't want to make things too complicated for the girls. Jenny said I can start bringing stuff over early, since the apartment is empty anyway. Darlene's frustration bubbled to the surface. So, you're already acting like you're moving out? Don't worry, and good riddance, she snapped, her voice thick with sarcasm. Jeff didn't seem fazed. Actually, he said, walking towards the door, your attitude seems to have changed since our talk earlier. Let me guess, you spoke with Miranda. Darlene's eyes narrowed. Don't try to play games by insulting Miranda. She's got my back, she said firmly, her anger simmering beneath the surface. She was the one who pointed out what you're doing with those Hawaii tickets. You made up that whole story just to make me feel guilty and back down. Well, it won't work, I still want the divorce. And I can't wait to be free. There are plenty of guys who'll give me what I need. Jeff let out a small sigh, his face almost pitying. You're right about that, he admitted, almost too easily. I don't doubt for a second that you'll have your pick of men once they know you're available. But you're wrong about the Hawaii trip. And I can prove it. Darlene's eyes flashed, her curiosity piqued despite her anger. Oh, really? She asked, her voice dripping with disbelief. Jeff pulled out his phone, tapping away quickly. Call Lois Simpson at Flight Right Travel Agency. She's the one who arranged the trip. I'll even call her myself if you don't believe me. The words hung in the air, thick with unspoken tension. Darlene stood frozen, the weight of everything that had happened crashing down on her. It wasn't just about the divorce anymore. It was about everything that had been said and done, the lies, the manipulation, the games they'd been playing. Jeff had clearly thought ahead, but now, Darlene was starting to wonder if she had underestimated him. Darlene's mind raced, her thoughts a blur as the conversation continued. She hadn't expected Jeff to bring her parents into it, and now the weight of everything seemed to crash down on her all at once. The call with Lois had already left her feeling blindsided, but hearing her parents discuss the trip as though it was a regular family event made her stomach churn. I just don't understand how you could do this, Darlene said, her voice tight as she tried to hold it together. Why didn't you tell me about the trip earlier, Jeff? And now, you're asking me to go with someone else? After everything? Jeff sighed heavily. Dar, I thought it would be a nice surprise, but then everything changed. This wasn't just about a vacation anymore. I thought you needed to see the reality of what we're facing. I'm trying to be responsible here, trying to make sure everything is in order before we start the separation. Her mother's voice came through the phone, filled with sympathy. Darlene, honey, we just want what's best for you. You've been so unhappy lately, and I can hear it in your voice. We were all really hoping that this trip would bring some joy back into your life. Yeah, and the girls were looking forward to spending time with us, Harold added, a bit of humor trying to lighten the mood. I was going to let them have as many cookies as they wanted, just like old times. Darlene's head was spinning. This wasn't how she had imagined things going. She'd wanted space, a chance to explore new possibilities, but now Jeff was making decisions for her, telling her how things would go. Do you honestly think this is fair? Darlene finally said, her voice quivering with emotion. You've already planned everything, and I'm supposed to just accept it and move on? I'm not trying to control you, Dar, Jeff replied softly. I just thought you needed to know where we stand. I didn't want you to feel pressured into making a decision before you're ready. I thought maybe the trip could help you figure things out. Darlene stood in silence, the weight of his words hitting her harder than she expected. I don't want this to be about me anymore, she said finally. I want to focus on what's best for the kids. I need some time to think. Her parents' voices became distant as they tried to reassure her, but all Darlene could focus on was the way Jeff had manipulated the situation. He had planned this trip, had spoken with her parents, and now, even though they were on the verge of separating, he was still trying to control her decisions. Mom, Dad, she said, her tone softer now, I just need some space. I'll figure things out on my own. I understand, sweetie, her mother said. We're here for you. The call ended, and Darlene was left standing in the middle of the room, her emotions a swirling storm. She hadn't planned for things to escalate this way, but now, she was faced with the stark reality of what her life might look like. She didn't know how much longer she could hold on to the illusion of control. Everything felt out of her hands. Jeff stood there, still and cold, his suitcase in his hand, his eyes hard but unreadable. Darlene's words, though filled with emotion, didn't seem to have the effect she was hoping for. Her desperate plea for reconciliation hung in the air, but he didn't seem moved. "I'm not going to just forget about everything, Darlene," Jeff said finally, his voice low and firm. "You can't just erase the damage that's been done with a few tears. You've already made your intentions clear, and I can't pretend everything is fine when it's not. I don't think I can ever go back to the way things were after this." Darlene's heart sank as she realized that pleading wouldn't fix this. She had hoped that her apology, her promise to never bring up divorce again, might bring him back, but it didn't seem to matter to him now. His resolve felt unshakable. "You think this is all my fault," Darlene choked out, her voice cracking. "You're the one who wanted space, who pushed me to think this was the answer. I didn't ask for any of this, Jeff. I just wanted us to figure out what we really needed before we made a decision we might regret." Jeff's expression softened, but only slightly. He sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "I didn't want it to get this far either, Dar. But you said you were unhappy. You said you needed a break, time to figure things out. I can't ignore that. I can't pretend that nothing's changed just because you're scared of the consequences. I deserve more than just being an option in your life when you feel like it." Darlene's breath hitched as she tried to process his words. They were both hurting, both struggling with the situation in different ways, but his words felt like a final blow. "You're not the only one who's hurting," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm scared too. I didn't want to hurt you. I didn't know what else to do." Jeff didn't answer at first, his gaze flickering toward the door. He seemed to be weighing something in his mind, and for a moment, Darlene allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, there was still hope. But when he spoke again, it shattered that fragile hope. "I don't think I can keep living like this, Darlene," he said quietly. "I'm trying to be the best father and husband I can be, but I can't pretend to be happy when everything's falling apart. I need some time to figure out who I am outside of this marriage." Darlene stood there, her tears flowing freely now, but she didn't know what to say. She couldn't ask him to stay if he didn't want to. She couldn't force him to love her if he no longer felt the same way. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I never meant for it to get this far." "I know you didn't," Jeff replied softly, his expression softening. "But sometimes, things just get out of control. I need to go, Dar. I need some space. I think we both do." With that, Jeff turned toward the door. Darlene stood frozen in place, her heart shattering with every step he took. She had hoped for a miracle, but now, all she could do was watch him walk away. As the door closed behind him, Darlene collapsed onto the couch, the weight of everything crashing down on her. The life she thought she had was slipping through her fingers, and she didn't know how to stop it. Darlene's heart sank. She had hoped her words, her sincere efforts to fix things, would be enough. But now, standing before Jeff, she realized that perhaps it wasn't just about the list or the promises, there was something deeper that needed to be addressed, something she hadn't quite grasped until now. "Jeff, please," Darlene pleaded, her voice trembling. "I've done everything you asked. I've apologized, I've cut ties with Robert, I've even taken responsibility for all of it. I know I've hurt you, and I regret it more than you can imagine. But I'm begging you, don't walk away. I need you. We need you." Jeff wiped his eyes, his face hardening again as he looked at her, his voice steady but heavy with unresolved pain. "You don't understand, Dar. You keep saying you're sorry, but you don't see the weight of the betrayal. The trust we built, everything we had. It's broken. I can't just pretend that's not a huge deal. I know it's huge. Darlene cried, her chest tightening. That's why I'm doing everything I can to fix it. Can't you see that I'm trying? I love you. I'm not asking for perfection, but I'm asking for a chance. A real chance to make things right. She looked at him, hoping to see even the faintest sign that he was reconsidering, but Jeff's gaze remained distant, guarded. You hurt me, Dar. And right now, I can't just forget that. It's not about the lists or the promises. It's about trust, and we've lost that. Tears welled up in her eyes, and for a moment, she felt utterly powerless. She had given everything she had, apologies, promises, vulnerability, and yet it felt like nothing was enough. Her heart ached for the man she still loved, for the family she was on the verge of losing. I know, she whispered, her voice cracking. But I'm asking for a chance to rebuild it, Jeff. I don't want to lose you. I can't lose you. For a long time, Jeff didn't say anything. He just stood there, looking at the papers in his hands. Finally, he sighed deeply, as if the weight of everything had settled into his bones. I don't know, Dar, he said quietly. I can't promise you anything right now. But I'll think about it. I need time to process all of this. I need time to figure out if I can ever get past what's been done. Darlene nodded, her heart heavy but still clinging to hope. She had done what she could, now all she could do was wait. The road ahead was uncertain, but she wasn't ready to give up on her marriage, not yet. Darlene sat in silence, the night air cool against her skin, but her heart burned with a mixture of regret and hope. Her hands shook as she clasped them together in her lap, trying to absorb everything Jeff had said. He had agreed to try again, to build something new, something better, but the path ahead was uncertain. Her mind raced as she thought about how much she had taken for granted, how quickly everything had spiraled out of control, and yet, here they were, trying to rebuild what had been broken. I never thought we'd be here, Darlene said quietly, her eyes fixed on the stars above. I never imagined I'd be asking for another chance. But I'm here, and I'll do whatever it takes, Jeff. I promise. Jeff squeezed her hand, his voice low but filled with a weighty sincerity. We both have scars, Dar. We can't erase the past, but we can learn from it. I've seen how much you're willing to fight for this, and that matters. But it's not going to be easy. We have to take it one step at a time. She nodded, the gravity of his words sinking in. It was true, there was no magic fix, no instant return to the way things had been. They had both made mistakes, and rebuilding trust would take time, effort, and patience. But for the first time in a long while, Darlene felt like they were moving forward, slowly, cautiously, but with a real sense of purpose. I'm willing to take it slow, Darlene said softly. No rushing, no pretending everything's fine. Just, us, figuring it out, one day at a time. Exactly, Jeff replied, his thumb gently brushing against her hand. We don't need to have all the answers right now. We just need to be honest. No more secrets. No more pretending. The two sat in the silence that followed, not uncomfortable, but full of unspoken understanding. The road ahead wasn't clear, but they were taking the first steps together, this time, not in the shadows of betrayal, but in the light of a shared commitment to rebuild. As they sat there, side by side, the air between them felt different. It wasn't the warmth of the past, but a tentative promise of something new, something they could make together if they both put in the work. And though neither of them knew what the future would bring, for the first time in a long while, Darlene felt something she hadn't felt in months, hope. As the months slipped by, Jeff and Darlene found themselves navigating the complex process of rebuilding their relationship. It was a journey neither of them had expected, and certainly not one that could be rushed. While their marriage was still fragile, the small victories they celebrated each day gave them a quiet sense of hope. Their 20th wedding anniversary came and went, marked not by a lavish vacation in Hawaii, but by a simple, intimate dinner at home, a sharp contrast to the trip that had once symbolized the discord in their lives. Yet, in the stillness of that evening, there was something deeply genuine. The warmth that filled the room was a reminder of the connection they had once shared, and, maybe, could share again. Jeff, however, remained cautious. He had forgiven Darlene, but his heart wasn't yet fully healed. He wasn't about to forget the hurt she had caused, and though he could see the effort she was putting in, he continued to observe her actions, making sure her promises were more than just words. Trust, he realized, was something that had to be rebuilt, piece by piece. And it would take time. Darlene, for her part, had changed. The person she had been before, the one who had let herself get swept up by another man, the one who had been swayed by Miranda's manipulations, was no longer the same. She had cut ties with Miranda completely, blocking her number without a second thought. Her fleeting relationship with Robert was now a distant memory, something she regretted but could not undo. She had learned a painful lesson, and though the shame lingered, she was committed to proving herself to Jeff every day. One afternoon, Jeff was in his workshop, lost in the calming rhythm of sanding an old chair. The repetitive motion was soothing, almost meditative, allowing his mind to wander. Darlene entered quietly, 2 mugs of coffee in her hands. She set one down next to him without saying a word. "Thanks," Jeff said, his eyes still on his work. "Can I sit?" she asked, her voice gentle. "Of course." She took a seat on a nearby stool, watching him for a moment as he worked. The silence hung between them until she spoke. "I've been thinking a lot about us. About everything we've been through." Jeff paused, laying down the sandpaper. "And? I know I can't undo what I did, Jeff," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "But I want to thank you. Thank you for giving me a second chance. I don't take it for granted. Not for a second." Jeff leaned back in his chair, studying her face as if looking for some hint of insincerity. But all he saw was sincerity, and that made him pause. "You've been doing better, Dar. I can see the effort. But trust, it takes time, it's not something that comes back overnight." Darlene's eyes softened. "I know," she replied quietly. "I'm willing to wait as long as it takes." Jeff nodded, returning to his work, though his hands felt a little steadier. "That's good to hear. Because I need to believe that this time, it's different. That you're different." "I am," she said, her voice firm with conviction. "I've learned a lot about myself, Jeff. About us. And I realize now that what we have is worth fighting for." Time, as it tends to do, passed. A year had come and gone, and with it, the pain of the past seemed to soften, though it wasn't forgotten. Their efforts began to show. Slowly, but surely, Jeff allowed his guard to come down. Darlene's commitment to their marriage was no longer in question. She had proven, time and again, that she was dedicated to rebuilding what they had lost. They communicated more openly now, their conversations no longer laced with suspicion or resentment but with understanding and the occasional laugh. They started to appreciate the small things, the way Jeff would hold her hand during a movie, the way Darlene would make him his favorite coffee on lazy mornings. These small gestures, once taken for granted, were now monumental milestones. The girls, blissfully unaware of the depth of their parents' past struggles, seemed happier than ever. Family dinners were filled with laughter again, and the tension that had once permeated the house had faded. There was a sense of peace in the air, a peace that had been hard-won and was now being carefully nurtured. Though the wounds were still there, they no longer defined them. What mattered now was the future. And for the first time in a long time, Jeff and Darlene were building that future together. One day, while cleaning out the attic, Jeff stumbled upon an old photo album. He and Darlene sat on the floor, flipping through the pages, revisiting memories from their early years. There were pictures from their wedding day, vacations they had taken together, and shots of their girls when they were toddlers. "Look at us," Darlene said, smiling wistfully as she pointed to a photo. "We were so young." Jeff chuckled. "And clueless." "We've come a long way," she said, her voice filled with emotion. "I know I almost ruined it all, but I'm so glad we're still here." Jeff turned to her, his expression serious. "Me too, Dar. It hasn't been easy, but I'm glad we're still trying." A year had passed since their near divorce. Jeff and Darlene stood in their backyard, hosting a barbecue for friends and family. The atmosphere was light and full of laughter, the scent of grilled food filling the air. Jeff watched Darlene chat with her sister, Erica, an interaction that had once been strained, but now seemed completely at ease. Later in the evening, Erica approached Jeff with a smile. "You two look good together," she said. "I'm glad you're working things out." Jeff nodded, feeling the weight of everything they had been through. "It's been a process, but it's worth it." As the sun began to set and the guests started to leave, Jeff and Darlene found themselves alone on the porch. The sky was painted in soft shades of pink and orange. Darlene rested her head on Jeff's shoulder, her voice barely above a whisper. "Thank you for not giving up on us." Jeff placed his hand over hers, giving it a gentle squeeze. "Thank you for proving that I was right to try." For the first time in a long time, Jeff felt a deep sense of peace. Their journey had been anything but easy, but they had come out stronger. They had learned that love wasn't just about the happy moments, it was about sticking together through the hard times and choosing each other time and time again. As the stars began to twinkle in the night sky, Jeff looked at Darlene, feeling a sense of certainty. Despite everything, they had built something new, something worth holding on to.